old friend of mine, Raj Nagra of the Bartender Boxing Association organization. Sorry, Raj, I call as one of the godfathers of modern brand ambassadorship. Because before brand ambassadors were brand ambassadors, he was one. And now with his new passion project, Bartender Boxing Organization, which is what we're talking about today, his passion project sort of blown up into something way bigger than I think. I'm hoping that it's exceeded his expectations. So thanks a lot for joining me, Raj.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Shawn. Sorry it's taken such a long time too.
Everybody's schedule, and then like I moved and you've got everything, and everything's crazy right now for everybody. So it is interesting how while we have to be very cautious of how the industry's sort of bouncing back from COVID or being hit by COVID, there's a lot of things, a lot of passion projects that a lot of people have been doing that have blown up for a lot of people. And did you ever think the BBO was going to be where it is right now? Was that the plan?
I think ultimately that would be the hope for it. I mean, I knew that it had potential, and I think more than just the BBO, I think it was about health and wellness in our industry. I had seen it. I still think today, there's a lot of talk about health. There's certainly a lot of valid and wonderful programming out there. Boxing, I still think today is on the peripheral a little bit. It's not for everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. But I think that the mainstream audience, consumers, health today is huge, right? I think it's probably 3 times bigger than the pharmaceutical industry. It's massive. So there's an awful lot of people investing in it. And I think people are much more aware today of the health than they have been in our industry previously. I think one of the issues that people in our industry face is that kind of that vicious cycle, the late nights, the sleeping in, all of that kind of stuff that sort of perpetuates, and it's pretty difficult to find an out. I've always thought of sport and being active as, something that was very fortunate, being able to play soccer for all those years and, being able to show up at the boxing gym. So it's really giving people an opportunity or providing them with an outlet to be able to improve their health. And the other thing a lot with whether it's gym memberships or regardless of boxing, whatever it is, it can add up pretty quickly. So cost is sometimes a factor for people in our industry, or it's at least a barrier. So mm-hmm. to be able to get beyond that, the program itself was always supposed to be the journey. We do fights at the end. It's a consequence of the program. So you don't want to get out of bed at 10 o'clock in the morning to show up at the gym. Well, guess what? Yeah. You're going to pay for that down the road. So I think that, I think everybody starts out with doing something from a purist point of view. It's genuine because it's, it's of interest to them, or it's something they like to do as a hobby, etc. Something I've invested a lot of time over the years into. And the idea is that people get hooked on the sport and then they go on this journey, and yes, the hope has always been that it would be world domination. But I think, I think all of these things take a tremendous amount of effort and sacrifice, and then things just don't happen overnight. It takes time. The biggest challenge or the hurdle, I would say, is, bringing the industry around to acknowledge that, hey, it might be boxing. It is safe. As far as sports go, you're much more likely to get injured running, or a number of different sports before boxing. But I think the perception is there. So getting beyond that has been a bit of a challenge, right? I mean, to find people that are interested in supporting something of this nature. But guess what? I mean, there's not many sports that are going to give you that profound result. This is an intense, insane industry. So how do you counteract that? You need something equally as fierce, and sort of life-changing in that sense. And I think that's why it works. I think people, they go through this process and then they change, and not just change after a week of training. It's 12 weeks, so they're conditioned. It's like getting out of bed in the morning, right? the first 10 times you try and do it, get out that front door, it doesn't happen, or you kind of, you know, procrastinate a bit, but you do it enough, and then it's when you're mid-run that you go, this is fucking great. This is a wonderful sensation. I love it. You know, it's good because your lungs are pumping and, you know, the sun's out, whatever. But you do that enough and it becomes, you want to get out that door a little bit more. It's always getting out the door is the hard part. So something like this, 3 months of training, you're reprogramming the way people think. And, you know, when they see the results and they're learning something completely new that has nothing to do with bartending, but has direct, profound results that make you a better husband, make you a better father, make you a better employee. You know, these are things that you can't put a price on. And in that sense, that's real advocacy, I think, today in this industry. You know, every brand can take you on a freaking trip to Paris. You know, the next week you're off with somebody else. And, you know, how does that have long-term benefits to you as an employee or as an employer, you know?
So talking about journey, how did you get to this point? Like I mentioned that I see you as one of the godfathers of modern ambassadorship, because really back when you started brand ambassadorship, there was only a handful.
I remember, hang on a second, cut it. I remember coming up to Queensland and catching up with you every once in a while. How many years ago was that?
That would have been, I think we met in 2004.
Right.
So
well over the hill at that point.
I think 2004, 2000, and it might have been earlier than that, actually. And you know what?
Yeah, I feel like it might have been.
It was 2001, 2002, because I remember doing your Bombay seminar like 5 times, because it was in the era before social media, before the internet.
Thank God.
So, before social media, before the internet. And so I talk to the kids these days when it comes to like brand seminars and stuff like that. I'm like, you guys are so spoiled. Like, you can go on your phone and find a recipe. Back in the day, like if you wanted to learn about a product, that's what brand ambassadors did for you. Like, there wasn't a lot of books out, there wasn't a lot of internet access. But yeah, so how long were you with Bombay for?
Well, from 2001 till last year, basically.
Wow, that's a long tenure, and that was all over the world as well, right?
Yeah. So you know, started out in Australia in this strange new role. You walk into bars in Brisbane, for example, as well as all over the country, and people would look at you like, "What am I doing here? Who are you?" You know, and that's kind of how it went. But the result was always good, and then eventually, I think a couple of years into the role, nationally, started traveling through Asia, being consulted out like $1,000 a day plus all expenses and business class seats and stuff. So that, you know, I did Asia Pacific for a while, and then moved to Shanghai, I think in 2007. And then by 2009, moved to Miami in the US. And then in 2011, moved to New York and took the global role.
So what was obviously the BBO has been a massive passion project for you, and I do think the BBO, you started that in 2016, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So 2016, like that's sort of the early days of this health and wellness movement in the hospitality industry. Before that, there wasn't a lot of talk. Like mental health was still very stigmatized, and substance misuse and stuff like that. What was the driver? Like, I always ask long-term brand ambassadors who have left their positions, what was the driving force, leaving what most people would assume is like a dream job, and tackling something like a passion project?
Yeah, I think don't do it, first of all, because you never know if there's a COVID around the corner, just to really make things interesting. But you know, I've been doing it for so long. I think I was, you know, you want to enjoy what you're doing, and you know, I think it's easy to get spoiled these days. You know, when you stop looking at things like you're doing something for the first time with wide-eyed sort of wonder and excitement, then you know that's probably not the thing you should be doing. You know, to be honest, after taking a year out, you know, running around North America and Australia, etc., wearing tracksuit pants, you know, and that kind of vibe, I kind of do miss it a little bit, it's being a bit closer to the action in that sense. But, I think for me, I was fortunate because, whilst I was still employed, the passion platform, let's call it, was thriving at that point. So it kind of, for me, was equal parts of, what do I do now? Do I stay in this sort of very comfortable position, or do I've created this monster? What am I going to do with it? And I was really sort of burning the candle at both ends for a long time there. And it just felt like it was the right time to transition. I'm also not getting younger. So if I wanted to venture out and have the energy to do different things or explore different avenues, it was definitely just felt like the right time to do it,
So when did you first kick off? What was the very first event for the BBO? Was that Tales of the Cocktail? Is that correct?
We did headline at Tales year on year. So, but the first event we ever did was in LA, actually. And it was my favorite event.
The first one was always your favorite?
It was a complete shit show, but it was my favorite, even to this day. Because when this thing started, right, I'd be talking to like a Steve Schneider or a Giuseppe Gonzalez, right? And it's like, you hear these, you're standing at, I don't know, freaking Mother's Ruin at 3 o'clock in the morning, in New York City or whatever. And you're just chatting, and it's like, oh, this guy's a badass dude, and that guy's a badass dude, and, kind of like just talking crap. And then it kind of started, I think when I first started pitching, this was about 2014. It took a long time to find, Cazadora stepped up, and they've been a wonderful partner over the years, but originally, and, it kind of started out, the idea was for it to be like a Fight Club kind of vibe, but the undertone, I think if you look at boxing from the outside, you say, hey, it's really brutal, it's violent. It's nothing like that. It's like a chess match when you're in the ring, and you're pushing yourself, you're mentally thinking, you're trying to make your body match what it's completely athletic, and it's a complete mind game as well. So once bartenders, you condition the crap out of them and they want to vomit. Many do in the early stages, but then they start, getting the ab game going, and you need to be in really good shape. But once they start to learn what it's like being in the ring, and learning to breathe and keeping your hands up, there's a million different things to think about. It's still classed as one of the most difficult sports in the world. I mean, I don't really want to talk about a McGregor and a Mayweather, but I mean, he spanked his ass, and made him look like a freaking chump. Because it's true, it doesn't matter. You can be rounded in a lot of different areas or different fields of martial arts, but boxing, I still think, is the most difficult by far.
So I'm just going to jump in. I've got chat coming on my right hand side here. Sean Finter says, "Is Sean Finter the best southpaw you've ever come across?"
Well, when you talk about southpaw, right? So you're lefty. So orthodox is standing with your left hand forward, your right hand back. I would say that Sean, in this instance, being a southpaw, literally has 2 left feet. Man, he might be big and intimidating, but we all know he's a bit of a Care Bear, and not imposing in any sense of the word. So yeah, no danger there.
That's his next intro right there. Sean the Care Bear Finter.
A ton of potential power, but it's like dancing. You either have rhythm or you don't. You know what I mean? So it's like a bad 80s movie, really, when it comes to dancing, if you were to use that analogy.
So as the BBO's grown and developed.
Oh, I didn't tell you about the first event.
Yes, keep going with the first event.
Where people were peeing in the trash cans and stuff, So we did this first event, and it was at Fortune Boxing Gym, right? So Justin Fortune's Australian guy, actually. And he fought Lennox Lewis in '95, for example. And he's Manny Pacquiao strength and conditioning coach. So he's legit. Now, his gym is in West Hollywood. So I've been training there for a while. And so we decided to have the event at the gym, right? You could maybe fit 200 people in there, like shoulder to shoulder. And of course, we had 400 or 500 people show up. And so people were crammed in there. It was also, sort of mid-year. So it was hot. It was like 120 degrees at, 9 a.m. in the morning. And then you've got a tin roof. And then you've got these sardines crammed in this can, right? And it was, you couldn't move, let alone get a drink or use the bathroom. And you were literally just like saturated. And everybody's kind of, shouldn't talk about this stuff too much, but people were right up near the ring, and people were coming up to me saying, I've never been so offended in all my life. I don't know what this is, but I love it, stuff like that. And it was the atmosphere was electric. You couldn't make it up. It was exactly like a Fight Club kind of vibe. People were crowded in there, people were cheering. It was, everyone was there supporting their competitors, and absolutely incredible. Still my favorite. We've obviously become a lot more polished over the years, but still my favorite. You could just cut the air with a knife. You couldn't make it up. It was brilliant.
So you went from brand ambassador to the BBO. Obviously, you have got a skill set in marketing and the talking and that sort of thing. But what were the big hurdles that you found personally taking on this it is an entrepreneurial project, but it's also something that has a lot of rules and regulations based around it. Obviously, a lot of moving parts because, as we all know, bartenders are flaky as hell. And when you're trying to get bartenders to train for, as you said, 12 weeks before a fight, what were the sort of hurdles that you were like, oh, I didn't see this coming whatsoever?
Yeah, just on the entrepreneurship, I want to just give a shout out to Sean Finter because he's saying that hurts. I'm sorry, Care Bear, but Sean's always been an incredible friend and a mentor to many, many people in this industry, and he's definitely been, a really important part to my puzzle, figuring things out from a business point of view. He's been a great mentor and a great friend always. But I think with this whole boxing thing, I'm just trying to think back rather than just sort of rattle things off. But I think in the early stages, it's what we've learned over the years. There's been a lot actually, but when you talk about, you said regulations, that we're limited to the amount of people we can have in each program because it costs a lot of money to train people personally, equipment and insurance and registrations, etc., and quite often travel and all that kind of stuff. So what we've learned over the years is to try and group the weights as closely as possible. So we always have equal male, female. And, in fact, females are better sometimes because they haven't watched too many action movies and they don't think, they know something or other about throwing a punch. So usually, so grouping the weight classes has been key because that means people are interchangeable. We can have really competitive bouts. It's not always the best thing for peripherals because then if you're too heavy or you're too light, it's pretty difficult to get into the program. But we have a tremendous amount of applications, which is incredible. So, and if we could get everyone involved, we would. We try and stay away from heavyweights as much as possible, usually because they sit outside the weight sort of restrictions that we look for. But the idea is that if someone were to drop out or get injured, then you can sort of interchange them. The other thing that the application process has really been zipped up a lot. So we try and we do everything we can from being transparent up front to having a really detailed application process. If you kind of fill that out, you don't want to sit there and sort of spend half an hour doing that, then you're probably not going to be wanting to show up at trainings. And then people like, Jason Luttrell, who spent a long time working with us, he's really good at that stuff. So a really detailed interview process. Then we started doing tryouts. Mm-hmm. So if you make the top 20, say, based on the application process and a chat on the telephone, then we bring you along to a tryout. And the tryouts are designed to break you. Like just Ivan Drago the crap out of them, you know what I mean? And the idea is to try and make them puke, I remember this last round we did on the West Coast before COVID came along. And San Francisco stands out from memory, and even Vegas last round because there were 20 people there. All of them wanted that spot. and nobody was quitting. And it's literally just, I mean, you and I would vomit just looking at the amount of crap. It's even, we work with a lot of the same gyms now, so they kind of know what we're trying to do and they're on board. So they're people puke, etc. But there are certain cities where people just wouldn't break. It's like you've done a 200 burpees in the last hour, and plus push-ups, plus crunches and sprints, and you're still going. So in those instances, sometimes the gyms will allow other people to train or offer free memberships and stuff like that. So it's really encouraging. But then, you have the odd occasion where you'll have somebody who is applied to the program 5 times. They don't quite fit in to to the parameters that we're looking for or whatever, but that person needs a lot of help. So we might just slide them in that instance to, because we're just trying to help people ultimately. So there's a lot of different things and tricks that we learn, but usually once people get past the first 2 weeks, they're usually the most difficult. We have chat groups and stuff that we do and we follow up with everybody. But after the first couple of weeks of training, people are a lot more confident, because it's new. We try to work with people that don't have any boxing experience. So they're completely green. Just to even the odds, so once they get past those first couple of weeks, they become accountable to each other. They're like a bar team, except they're in a gym, and they start to get familiar with each other, in a real sense, not through a boozing sense. And they get to know the coaches, and they know that they really have to work hard to earn that spot. And if they're not going to take it seriously, that could have gone to somebody else. So, there's a lot of language that we use, a lot of transparency to inform people of what they're getting into.
How many days a week are you training them? How many days a week for the training?
3.
3?
3 days a week, usually 11 to 12 or 12 to 1 is the time that tends to work. So if you're working late at night or if you're working a lunch shift, you can kind of get in there. We've done things like have a couple of different sessions depending on the gym. But to be honest, what happens more often than not is, because we give them access to the gym and additional classes, etc. People are, they're getting personally trained outside of the 3 days. They're running together on the beach, whatever. Like they become a unit, and the coaches are driving them, and so it becomes extracurricular.
Mm-hmm.
There's people that are in the gym 6 days a week, and then clocking miles, and they're doing sprints up hills. It just takes a life of its own, and it's impressive to see people come together in that way.
I'm just curious, what is your max weight limit at the very top as a 6'5", 270-pound guy?
I'll take you. Yeah, I've actually lost a ton of weight, but I'm usually about 225. So if I start eating again, maybe you and I can face off for fun.
I could drop down to 240. I can drop down to 240.
Yeah, you're a big unit. I think there's definitely opportunities to branch. We are centered on boxing. We want to grow the sport of boxing. That's part of our mission, because it is a beautiful sport. We want to bring light to that. This is an incredible time in boxing as well. Fitness wise, everybody recognizes that there's no way you get into the same shape or as quickly without boxing. You need to have that as part of your repertoire, whether you want to learn the technical aspects of it or not. There's a lot of people around the world now that just that train in boxing for the fitness aspect alone, but there's a lot more to it than that. And so my biggest hope always is that people get hooked on the sport, because you certainly don't become a great fighter in 12 weeks, but you can get into really, really good shape, and you can learn the solid fundamentals that you need to then go off on that journey. Because boxing is one of those sports that takes years and years to perfect, if you can.
And so with the exposure of boxing to more people, especially in the hospitality industry, the reason why we haven't been able to connect is that you've been working on a massive project over the last couple of months during COVID. Like I said off camera, I think a lot of people started really working their side hustles and leveraging their side hustles in interesting ways while COVID hit, because that's the sort of way we had to do it. You had to survive.
Yeah.
So what was this big project that you were working on with the BBO?
I think one of the things I took from one of Shawn's I think it was one of his Zoom calls or whatever, was that, you know, like if you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, this is not a time to take a back seat, you know. You stop, you die, you know, you sink. So, but you know, I think everyone's learned a lot about themselves during a time like this, you know, because it kind of disrupts your norms, your everyday, you know, your routines. Everyone's had to rethink the way that they live, that they take care of their kids, that they perform at work, you know. And with that, there's been a tremendous amount of anxiety and pressure and stress. Nobody's immune to that, whether you're employed or otherwise, you know. This is a strange time in the world, and this is disruptive, and it's not something we're used to, and it's challenging every, you know, every value that we have, and we're having to spend more time at home with our wives.
Well,
just kidding, but
wives have to spend more time with us at home, which I think
correct.
which is more painful.
And you know, I talk to a lot of people, obviously, during the week, as do you. But you know, you'll hear my kid in the background. He's loving screaming at the moment. So I'm surprised you can't hear him right now. But you know, this is just a whole new way that people have had to adjust. But for me, you know, I think when this thing came along and we had to stop 4 programs that we were running on the West Coast, we still wanted to help people, you know, so we went online and started doing IGTV live workouts every single day. I think we did 2 straight months, minus Easter Sunday or something. But there was a lot of saturation at that point as well, because everybody turned to social media. And I really, one of the things I've always wanted to do was to produce instructional sort of content online, you know. But it was, I think, A, time, B, sort of the investment, having an opportunity to do that and having something that's shot properly. But so the first thing we wanted to do, you know, we heard a lot, well, I was talking to a lot of people about just the sort of relief programs or projects that were in place for the industry, and that, you know, there was a lot of red tape, and there was a lot of applications and process, and it was time consuming, and then people weren't really getting the rewards they were hoping for, you know. And so I thought, well, hang on, why don't we launch this relief project, you call it that, support project really. But it was, we went to Vegas and shot with City Boxing Gym a series of the fundamentals of boxing, because I think in the last few months, you'll see there's been a lot more of the instructional stuff, you know, that's come online, but there wasn't really a lot out there. There's certain people doing bits and pieces. You could do a search on YouTube and you could find, you know, how to throw a jab, for example, but there was nothing that was comprehensive and in place, that like a library or something you could click a button and learn all those things. So to me, I think whether you're a student with the sport, you're sat at home on your couch for the last few months, you want to learn about boxing. To me, it's kind of like, it's like cocktails, right? These millennials, we can say these millennials, right? Because it's kind of like, people want to go to the best bar. They want to go to the best steakhouse. They want to say that they ate that rare cut of meat. They want to say that they had that particular cocktail, right? And you know, when we were drinking, it was, hey, you got $50. How many drinks can we get? How smashed can we get? You know, that's when we were kids. Today, it's not like that. People are consuming a very different behavior. But as that, people, they want to feel like they know. They might not necessarily watch cooking shows, but it doesn't mean they're going to go make that pastry. No, but they kind of want to know how to do it. You know, it's just was one of those things. And I think boxing and many sports in that sense is the same thing. People want to know about stuff, then they might not necessarily go and practice it. But I think there's a lot of people that want to get into boxing that just don't know how, because I've trained I've traveled the world, obviously, over the years. I've lived in a lot of different cities, and in all of those places, I've gone to the local boxing gyms, and they're not your local neighborhood bar. You know what I'm saying? Like, people aren't going to say, "Hey, welcome to my palace." You know, they're not going to say that. It's kind of like a little bit, you know, cold-shouldered, and it's a little bit, I wouldn't say hostile, but it's not a place where people, they don't need to be welcoming. You know, people go there to train. And so it's a different mindset. So to get into that, to walk into a boxing gym off the street, not knowing anything about the sport, and then trying to learn, it can be very intimidating, right? It can be intimidating just going to the local gym, you know, if you don't have big chest like me, you know. Joking. But so I think there's a huge barrier there for people to access the boxing aspect. But anyway, so we did this thing. We did the series. I still think it's a remarkable series, right? It wasn't shot in high definition or anything like that, but I know on the budget we had. And the idea was that our audience, or our tribe, could sign up to Stick and Move, which is our new training hub, right? Stickandmove.org, and it's free. People could sign up, and then they would get their own link to that content, and then that link would also have their Venmo information attached to it. So anyone who wanted to sign up could use that link, and then they could share it with their audience for a donation, a nominal donation if they wanted it. Was it that successful? No, because a lot of people were on unemployment benefits, and I think they were pretty remarkable at the time from what I'm hearing. So there wasn't a huge amount, but what we did in the same sense was we launched the online series, and it's still there, and I think it's an incredible resource. So if you want to learn how to box and you want to practice it in the lounge room, go to that site and check out that series of videos. Super comprehensive, teach all the fundamentals that you need, right? Hours of fun. So then we wanted to do a second series, and then we did that just recently with Golden Boy Promotions. So that's a project I've been working on for a while. Obviously, COVID has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works with that. And so that's the second series. So it's a kind of a build on the series 1, which was called Becoming a Boxer. And the second series is called 12 Rounds. And we've got people like Bernard Hopkins, we're still to shoot people like Oscar De La Hoya, but, people like Ryan Garcia. There's a tremendous amount of talent. So to be able to sort of curate and shoot that series has been a lot of fun. And so we were working with Hennessy on that, it's just been a really fun project. And I think offered me a lot of sanity during a very strange time, It's good to be busy.
Did you find that you fanboyed out when you were lucky enough to meet these boxers face to face and work with them and sort of like get to experience, instead of watching on TV, and I know you go to lots of fights as well, like actually experiencing them like 6 feet away and just moves?
I think there's having that veil of masks and goggles kind of it's a bit of a more than just a protective layer, but no, I think it was good. I think there's a certain tempo to those situations where safety was obviously a measure, given that for example, Golden Boy had to cancel a few fights recently because one of the fighters contracted COVID. But other than that, we had a fairly tight schedule, strict schedule. So, I'd written out the brief and what we wanted to cover in these videos, and then you kind of try and bring that to life. Now, mind you, boxers, they box, their job is to not get up and, publicly speak. Yeah. So it's not natural to everybody. So to try and capture what you needed in that sense was, it was hands-on, but it was a lot of fun. So there wasn't really a lot of time to be, I don't know. I think
you were just trying to get to the goal. You were just like trying to
I think everyone was on the same page. It was a really creative and fun experience, but very consuming. So no, I don't think I was really that. That might have been a few years ago, I think, but.
So this is because you did bring it up earlier about the boxing reputation and it being a brutal blood sport. I used to box when I was a kid with my dad, and had a couple of fights myself. But you obviously see the beauty in it. And what do you say to the detractors that there's a lot of health and wellness for the hospitality industry out there? There's a lot of videos and PowerPoints and this sort of stuff. We do yoga at Tales of the Cocktail, stuff like that. But really, I appreciate the fact that the BBO is a mechanism for change, and especially for the mental health and physical health of bartenders. It's an actual mechanism because you can see that it's not just doing a seminar and hopefully the people that have watched that seminar or watched that video go off and practice. It is actually something that puts it into practice. But what do you say to the detractors who say, well, yoga for bartenders and boxing for bartenders are two different things, when in my opinion they're exactly the same?
Yeah, look, first of all, I wouldn't take anything away from any kind of health initiative, right? It all contributes, and I think that there's a lot of different things out there that are appealing to a lot of different people. And what I said earlier in this conversation is that, I think boxing is still one of those sports which is, slightly segmented for a lot of people. Like it's not something that people really, they know that much about, but as part of our job is to bring people around to the sport. Now, yoga is great. I think a lot of sports, it's all good. What we do, I know factually, based on the feedback that we get from it, it's kind of unequivocal, really, is that people don't want to go back to being who they were after this. We're not, this is not something that lasts for a day, something that lasts for 3 months. And it ultimately sets people on a journey that they can't be the people they were before. I'll give you one example. So Daniel Hilton, I don't know if you know Daniel Hilton, he works at Logo Plantation in Sydney. And it's a good example because exercise, no doubt, if I don't exercise for a week, I start to feel like something's wrong. I start to feel slightly depressed, and then I start to have all these sort of thoughts enter my head. But the minute I go for a run, the world is a little bit less scary after that, So I don't have to go into the science or the details behind how it works. But the reality is, exercise is a great way to offset stress, whether that's running, doing circuit training, doing whatever, right? What we do with the fight at the end is a huge mental challenge. Not many people can say, first of all, that they've had a registered bout, right? They haven't had a sanctioned bout. It's quite an achievement. It's a very personal journey, but with that comes a lot of other baggage. Am I going to make myself look like a fool? Am I prepared for this? There's fear, there's all kinds of feelings. But once you go through that and you come out the other side, a lot of people say, I address the small stuff anymore. Like, hey, none of that stuff matters to me. You feel better, you look better. You're in a new community of friends. It's something you've been doing for such a long time now that that change is real. The example, Daniel Hilton, he said to me when I went to Sydney, he said, look, I want to thank you. And I said, why? He said, because before this came along, I was about to commit suicide, right? I was planning how to do it, when to do it, etc. And I felt like when I saw, the ads or the editorials, etc., that this was something that maybe could help me. And he said, look, being on this journey, he said, I'm a completely different person. He'd lost 30, 40 pounds. He mentally was tougher. He well and truly broke out of that sort of the funk that he was in, And I think that sport, first of all, there's no substitute for it, whether that's physical or mental, right? It helps. And I think something like what we do is, Mitch Bushell, for example, said, when I think of the ultimate achievements at the end of this ride, this will be one of them. It's something that redefines people. It's something that's really meaningful. It's something that's life-changing. And I don't say that because it's bartender boxing, but it's true. It's a huge achievement in a short space of time that has remarkable effects on, not just your physical, the way you look, but on all aspects of your life. You're teaching people to just live better lives. That's what it is. And it's meaningful because it's over 3 months and there's an achievement at the end of it. And that's a huge, huge hurdle to overcome.
So what's your plan for the next 6 months? Are we going to see, once COVID's over, we're going to see a BBO pay-per-view event?
Sky's the limit, really. So without giving too much away, that's definitely something that I'm very interested to do.
Well, I really appreciate your time, man. I thank you so much. Your pure love for the sport is obviously evident when you think about it. It's kind of inspiring. My dad was a old boxer all through the Navy and stuff, so of course being a kid, I had to strap on the gloves and practice with him when I was a kid. So I completely understand that the romance and the dancing and that sort of thing. So my old man was so fanatic. I had to do ballroom dancing as a kid too, so that I could be light on my feet in the ring. So
you're like a modern day version of Lomachenko.
So, but once you start getting going, you may be able to, maybe have to put a heavyweight category in, and I'll sign up.
Yeah, I mean, you should go train with the old Dave Shuck at Eastside Boxing. It's great.
Yeah.
He's doing some amazing things in the local community as well, you know.
He really does. He's a fantastic ambassador.
Yeah, you should do that. So anyway, if you want to check out the current series, you can follow our Instagram at Bartender Boxing. So we give like weekly updates and stuff like that. And then you can go through the bartenderboxing.com and go to Stick and Move, or you can just sign up to stickandmove.org. It's free. And that's where you can access a bunch of this content. So
I'll throw that in the description when we post this week.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something to do, I mean, I think can definitely teach you what you need to know before you get into the gym, or if you are a boxer and you want to polish up some skills. The feedback's good, so I'm going to keep pushing along. I love the new offers, by the way.
Cheers. I'm really happy with it. I've never had a bar. I've never had my own private little space. In 22 being in the industry, I've always made it a rule that you don't make drinks when you finish work, because it's like if you haven't, it's like, I feel like it's like baseball. You go out, you do your shift, you put it all out on the field, and once you come in, the last thing you want to do is go to the batting cages.
But now you have a cottage as well.
I do.
So you can make noise.
I can make a lot of noise out the back. I've got a hot tub out the front door as well, so that's
nice.
That's going to start getting used very shortly as well.
Hey, Dean Callan, suck it.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks so much for having me.
Cheers, love. Bye.